today we have Michael McKay, Dr. Sheila McCartney, and Simon for their discussion. And just one more thing, I'd just like to mention there's a prize at the end of the session, so stick around. I'll be randomly giving that out. And yeah, without further ado, please welcome Michael, Sheila, and Simon.
All right, thank you, Chris. Yeah, as Chris said, my name is Michael McKay. I work for Anishinaabe Nation. I'm the Infrastructure and Housing Director there. How we're going to structure this presentation, it's going to be, I think we have 45 minutes, 20 minutes of the presentation, the slides. Then we're going to take some Q&A for 10 minutes. Then for the last 10 minutes, we just do a little walkthrough of the 4 designs that we have here today. So I'll get started on our on our presentation on community-led designs for specialized housing in the north. So yeah, this was part of our NAN housing strategy. This is one of the projects that came out of it. So last year we shared the strategy where we launched it. So this is kind of one of the sub-projects out of there. And as I said, it's the community-led designs for specialized housing in the north. And I'm joined by Sheila and Simon Jones of Loof Architecture. And they have worked with our team towards completing and launching this project. So we will provide an overview of the project and invite the audience up after we finish this. So back in August of 2021, NAN was successful in its application to CMHC's Housing Supply Challenge. This funding was intended for research barriers to construction and provide solutions. And we just wanted to make it clear too that none of the funds that are available, we're unable to spend it on capital and for project builds. So for this, we chose to focus on producing shovel-ready housing plans and toolkits to help communities with the implementation process and provide these shovel-ready housing plans that can be used by NAN First Nations, free of charge when applying for new housing funds. So these will be available for NAN community members. A little bit different feature to this was when the drawings are available, they'll be stamped by the architects. I know that's something we heard quite a bit through our NAN housing strategy, is that communities and leadership wanted, you know, that reassurance and that stamp on working drawings that they build within the communities. So to make sure the housing plans were appropriate and relevant to NAN communities, our teams used an engagement process called co-creation. This ensures all housing plans are designed by First Nations for First Nations. Is this the third slide? Yeah, so as mentioned, to go along with the shovel-ready housing plans, our team is developing 3 toolkits. The toolkits will address common challenges that have been heard in our engagements with NAN communities in regarding completing building projects. The toolkits will include project management, accessing funding, and tendering and procurement. And this will all be written from a NAN perspective. This is another common barrier we have heard in our engagements is the lack of stamp drawings available and the high costs associated with attaining them. So we're hoping that this project can break down those barriers for communities to use. So these are the themes that have been developed from NAN community members sharing their experiences and knowledge of housing and infrastructure. The themes present a holistic understanding of what is needed to change the current housing systems, to support community health and well-being, and to support community self-determination. So the NAN housing strategy, we call it the roadmap, a document that we've developed, includes 7 themes: advocating for inclusive housing systems, addressing health impacts of housing, appropriate and sustainable design and materials, integrated infrastructure planning, alternative funding structures, governance and policy reform, and capacity development and training. So we highlighted the three themes that this project helps address. Yeah, so those 3 projects, those 3 themes are the ones that are associated with this. So there are 4 typologies identified as housing solutions for population in greatest needs. Each typology is designed through a collaborative process by its own co-creation teams. Co-creation teams were specifically recruited to bring together a diversity of community members from across NAN territory who collectively represent the unique housing experience and vision of each target population. Each co-creation team is partnered with an architect and architects who are responsible for transforming the team's vision into reality. At every stage, designs are reviewed by local technical experts and community leadership to ensure contextual relevance and to support future implementation. So as you can see here, we have been working through the design concepts phase. Back in February, we moved into the schematic design phase at our May workshop. So this is just kind of a timeline of how we got to this milestone in the project. So from here, we will move into the detailed designs and eventually into construction drawings. So we're currently in the schematic designs, then we'll move into the detailed designs later next year. We are working on, we're working on the development of the toolkits as outlined there. We have the three toolkits, accessing funding, tendering, and procurement, and project management. You're up next, Sheila.
Thanks so much, Mike. My name's Sheila McCartney. I'm a professor in architecture and urbanists at Toronto Metropolitan University. I'm the director of Together Design Lab, and we've been working in partnership with NAN for the last 7-8 years. It's a very long time. And it's allowed us to really travel a lot through many NAN communities, spending up to sort of a week in each one. And we really value that experience. It's my pleasure today to talk to you more about the engagement and the design concepts around this. And so one of the key pieces of the first part of the project was, in the first stage, was creating the design briefs, was actually bringing together these participants in terms of co-creation teams and being able to think about how they can work together and what were the actual user groups that were coming out of this. The NAN housing strategy had identified four groups, and then we worked together with different participants to come up with their user profile, their housing needs, the different design preferences, and also the building programs for them. And then from there, we began to think about how could we think about the overlap between these different areas. So in the next stage, as we began to think about what the program pieces were for these specific user profiles, we had originally thought that the project was going to be organized sort of with 3 distinct groups, and that's sort of the way the housing would be divided among them. What we realized is that there was a lot of overlap between what Mike referred to as typologies, which is sort of types of houses. That would be sort of a 4-bedroom house, or a group home, or a 2-bedroom house. And so from there, we really, the object was to really think about and take in workshop learnings and translate them into what we were asking the co-creation teams and the architects to do. So from that, we created design briefs, and we really worked to verify with the different 4 co-creation teams if we'd gotten it right. So after co-creation session 1, we circled back to the design teams to be able to say, did we get this right? Is this the way that you want to proceed with this? We then began to finalize the concepts, and we shared these programs with the architects to get them started on how they could be able to build these different programs. And I know Simon's going to share with us afterwards what that looked like. And so we developed these sort of bubble diagrams for each of the different sort of populations and then looked for similarities between them. Within schematic designs, the aim was really to generate programs and floor plans that could then be able to move forward, as Mike said, in terms of detailed design over the coming years, to be able to provide those shovel-ready plans, stamped drawings, engineered drawings to move forward with. As part of this process, really we need to think about the priorities and preferences of each co-creation group. So within these different typologies, so we have 4 groups of architects, each working with a co-creation team, and then from there they're working to develop what the priorities and preferences are of the groups. And the process really included in one of the first sessions was deconstructing sort of the normal, typical 3 to 4 bedroom house that we find in Nan. It's that one that you've been in 100 times, but being able to actually, through an engagement process, sort of speak to people's lived experience of, well, what's wrong with this house? How can we improve this house and move forward? And so when we think about this sort of the engagement, this is sort of an illustration of, this is only one of the 4 phases. So this is one phase, and we do this 4 times. And every arrow indicates a time that the co-creation team is involved in a type of engagement session. And the point here is there's a lot of arrows. Many checking back, many times coming back to the co-creation team, many times the architects working with technical specialists from Anishinaabe Nation, but also within tribal councils, and then also going to building professionals. And so within this, when we think about this, again, this is only one of the 4 sub-phases, but it really represents the team engagement within it. So each phase follows the similar path, but remains flexible in order to respond to participants' ideas and needs. So an example of this that I highlighted before is that at the beginning, we had 3 designations for each of these different housing areas. After working with co-creation 1, we realized actually that there was these overlaps, and we could actually parse out and better use people's times and the funding to be able to sort of get more designs that we were looking at. So again, we realized there are these overlapping solutions that were possible. Important to this also, when we're thinking about people working together, there's also sort of sessions where data is reviewed. So after each co-creation session, staff from our team at Together Design Lab, and also the architecture teams, and also with Anishinaabe Nation, we review what people said, and we really have these internal checks and balances to reflect and make sure that we're really reflecting participants' information that they're giving to us. So when we think about the co-creation teams and workshops, co-creation teams really played a critical role in this process. They ensured sort of that each of the different models was tailored specifically to Anishinaabe Nation territories, but also the co-creation members came from across building professionals, people with lived experience from many of the 49 different communities. And when we think about the type of people that were involved, it was those with lived experience, knowledge keepers, and industry professionals from each of these different First Nations as well. So when we think about the role of engagement in the project, it really is relevant for non-technical participants. The aim was to have the lived experience for people, and now as we move forward into the detailed design pieces, we're going to be engaging more of the building professionals and technological expertise that reside within Anishinaabe Nation and within all of the different tribal councils. And so when we think about the fact within engagement, participant focus really is the expertise. And we do this really through interactive activities, which I think is the hallmark when we think about this project, or at least I think that is the way that people can get involved and really participate in the different activities together. And it can engage in a non-text, non-writing type of way. And we hope that that really comes across in the boards. So Simon, who's an architect, is going to speak specifically about his experience as one of the 4 teams.
Hello, everybody. I am Simon Jones from Loof Architects. We're one of the 4 architecture teams that are working on the co-creation, community-led designs. And our role really is to take the participant feedback, the information that we've received in the project brief that was developed in co-creation sessions before we were involved, and develop those into the detailed designs, the stamped shovel-ready plans. So Mike and Sheila have described the process a bit. We've been involved in the initiative since just before May of this year, before the second co-creation. We've been taking forward those 4 housing concepts that were identified in the first co-creation workshop, and we're working forward to developing those into construction-ready designs. Yes, here we are, sorry. So what we bring to the table is our expertise in housing design, in developing designs from project briefs into concrete designs. Housing is something that we do in our practice all the time, particularly at LUF, but I think that's the case for all 4 architecture practices. And that's everything from detached single-family homes to multi-story and multi-unit affordable and social housing. What we've been working on in the NAN initiative, with the input of NAN, TDL, and the community participants, ever since the beginning, since that co-creation workshop in Thunder Bay, has been understanding what is unique, what is different about First Nation communities, and then trying to make designs that reflect that reality. So our journey has involved all those steps that Mike and Sheila have described. The co-creation workshops, that's with community participants, face-to-face. We're working, sketching. In our most recent co-creation workshop in Timmins, we had these panels, models, so people were able to interact with something that was more concrete. And we're getting lots of feedback in those sessions. We're repeating that while we're away, virtually, online, with online sessions with the same community participants. Again, proposing ideas, proposing versions, iterations of these plans, getting feedback and trying to integrate those into the designs. Doing that also with the Technical Advisory Committee, built of local experts and leaders in housing and infrastructure from across the NAN communities. And then validating that weekly with meetings with the NAN infrastructure and housing group and with TDL. It's been a super enriching, super interesting process. We've heard from participants there's an urgent need for housing across all communities. We've also heard that there are differences between communities, between contexts, between levels of capacity, and different characteristics to each. So ultimately, we're trying to make a prototype design that meets core needs, but is adaptable to different situations. So you've seen some of this in the first part of this presentation. The initial research and the first co-creation session focused on developing design concepts. Sheila mentioned them quickly. So these are the 4 that were identified. Our team at LUF is working on the design called Living and Gathering. Living and Gathering is made up of 2 buildings or 2 parts. There's a small, compact living unit, and then a separate building with shared spaces for amenities, activities, and gathering, the gathering space. Those things are reflected in the panels up here, and you're welcome to come up at the end of the session to discuss those a bit more. There were 3 other teams. LGA Partners from Toronto, their panels are actually at the back of the room. They're working on a design for a group living situation for various types of groups, everything from youth to elders, and all the, anything between. There's a group from Winnipeg, number 10 architects, working on a design for a 1-2-bedroom home. And then also Sheila and the team from, the architecture team from Together Design Lab in Toronto, working on a design for a 4-bedroom home. All the architect teams are working through the same process. So we're all taking input from community participants, trying to make designs that are more adapted, that draw on the reality of First Nations communities, and that are designed for and designed with First Nations communities. So the progress on the housing concepts were reviewed in that co-creation session in Timmins. We've got a pile more comments, pile more feedback, and the next step then is to work that, integrate that back into the designs as we work through the detailed design stage, through preliminary and then final design. So we have a pile of the presentation panels. There's some models up here at the front. There are mock-ups of construction assemblies. We're hoping to get feedback and comments from you guys at the end of the session, so please feel free. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think that's what we're most proud of for this project, is how responsive and the architects have been into the feedback from community members. You know, they really take that feedback and comments and do incorporate them into all the designs you see here today. So yeah, these are the 4 major phases of the design process. And while many of the major decisions were made in the design and schematic phases, a lot of the work that must be done by the architecture and engineering teams to ensure that the designs can be implemented and meet all technical standards and specifications. So the goal is to have these completed, these designs completed by March of 2025. Yeah, so in developing the NAN housing strategy, communities identified populations experiencing greatest housing need and identified the lack of available and appropriate housing designs is a barrier to meeting their needs. This project will have designed specialized housing solutions with NAN community members and the ones in greatest needs, and make those designs free for NAN communities. And we're just wanted to share a quote from the housing strategy, the NAN housing strategy. Strategy's vision is to create positive change in the current housing systems, to support health and wellness, and to fulfill the human right of access to adequate housing. So yeah, I'd like to thank everyone here today for joining us for our presentation. Like I said at the beginning, we're available for some questions, and then we could do some kind of walk around and look through the designs. Thank you.
Do we have any questions for Mike, Sheila, or Simon from the crowd? Oh,
Right over here. I got a mic. I'll bring it around.
Thank you. Hi, just a quick question. Do you take any environmental risk factors like flood or wildfire considerations into your design, and how do you factor those in?
Absolutely. I think you can't design in the north without thinking about those risk factors, especially with a lot of the communities having experienced evacuations and floods lately. I think that's one of the main focuses for the architecture teams is moving forward, is thinking about what type of materials can really be built in the north. I know we've engaged sort of even a separate research project within the university, taking the recent sort of OEA recommendations for bio, really taking carbon neutrality into account for thinking about the building materials. And like we're adding that into that as saying, well, what does it mean to transport that to the north? How do those materials perform in the north? Are they going to be the same in the north? Once you take a heavy thing that is very carbon friendly, let's say in the south, but if it weighs a lot of money by the time you ship it up north, it ceases to be so. And so I think that that's a major piece of the project moving forward in terms of the detailed design. You're sort of looking at wall sections and floor sections, and I know that that's a prime consideration to be thinking about metals, but then also how they can perform in terms of water. I always say to people, one of the greatest fears of an architect is water. Like that is the thing that we are trying to keep out of buildings the most and keep people happy inside of them. So yes, it's a primary concern.
Maybe I can add just a couple of, so some of the answer to that comes to siting. And we don't necessarily have control of the siting across all the communities. We're designing the prototype. So part of that will also have to come from the communities in terms of, appropriate sites for the housing. But there are those things that we can control, which has to do with materials, for example, and how the materials help to protect the constructions. Metal roofs, for example, metal siding might be an answer to that, which will help to protect the houses against sparks during a wildfire, for example. Then, from the point of view of flooding, it's the lower part of the building, the foundations. I know one of the things that we're looking at, and I think this is the case across the 4 designs, is the space frame foundation system. Triodetic has one. They're here at the conference today. So that'll lift the building off the ground and leave a space underneath that is relatively free or relatively inert in terms of the potential for risk, up to a certain, we're going to end up at least 3 feet off the ground. So as long as the flooding stays below that line, the buildings might have sort of relatively limited damage. And then just generally speaking, I think all the architect teams have a concern for the ecological footprint, the environmental impact of the buildings. And so we're all looking at those kinds of strategies to kind of manage material usage and energy usage particularly.
I could add to that, specifically to the foundation type that we're looking at, that triodetic. I know a lot of communities are facing flood risks and maybe will face greater risks moving forward. I know back home in Bearskin, a few years ago, they had a flood in November when the Severn River backed up and flooded 3 critical roads in the community, cutting off the community from the airport. It is a remote community, and I know some of the houses within the community were flooded as well. And so, looking at different types of foundation was an important part of the project for reasons like that.
Thanks. Any other questions from the crowd?
Yeah, I noticed in your first slide there, you had on the start, you had a round design, and then you kind of went into square iterations or rectangular. Are you still interested in any kind of round design?
Sorry, are you referring to the design concepts?
That's right, the very first one there.
Sorry, the very first slide? No.
No, you had the right slide there, but then there's 4 panels.
This one?
No, 2 back.
Oh, this one.
That one.
That was not a round design, unfortunately. It was a circle that would show the types of drawings that would come out of each phase. So on the first one on the left side that looks like round design, it was representing sort of the bubble diagram, which shows the relationships of people within the house. But no, I guess in terms of round design being considered, there are sort of flow and round elements being considered within the homes of how people can flow through them. One of the main difficulties being is that the system that Triodetic of trying to protect for floods and lifting people off really steers towards a square design. And that because we're not building right on the earth, it's quite difficult through many material choices to have a round design. Some people participants did identify some areas of wanting some elements that sort of symbolize towards the round design. So for instance, in the LGA project in the group home, it's not round specifically, but it's really set up, it has some curved corners within it. It also has areas that sort of really specifically look at flow, that have a roundness to them that that they requested. That there wasn't really, because the participants were really driving the design, that was not something that came out as strongly in participant feedback between the 4 teams.
I guess my next question would be, are you interested at all in a round design?
So, yeah, so I think the community-led designs is targeting a prototype design that could be built anywhere across the 49 communities. I think it leads to things that are a little bit more typical standard construction practice, so round designs I think are an interesting idea. I think they're much more tailored to specific custom situations. For the purposes of the initiative, I think the prototypes are likely to end up being, using construction materials, using construction technologies, using construction systems that are more conventional, let's say. But understanding the idea of focusing, say, around a central element, I think that's true. Sheila mentioned it in the LGA design, where inside of a kind of much more conventional sort of rectangular orthogonal building type, you still have a center in the building, and then pieces around that center. I know that in our design for living gathering, there's a sort of idea about making a focus between the 2 sets of buildings, and likely in a likely scenario where the small living units come as a series of a number of units, creating a kind of creating a kind of center between these. A center between these two, I don't know if we've lost it altogether. A center between these 2 things, a space that is a kind of community space between the living units and the sort of gathering space. So I think our attempts are to create a sense of a center, a sense of a place in the middle, but using elements that are probably more conventional construction at the moment.